Well, I want to welcome you to Funding the Future Now podcast. My name is Dr. Randy Dirks. I am a fundraising professional. I've been doing it for 25 years with two nonprofits. And this podcast is really designed for nonprofit leaders, whether they be in the C-suite, whether they be fundraising professionals, executives, but try and look at their world, what they face, whether it be leadership issues, fundraising issues. And today I've got an amazing person that I just met a short while ago. Her name is Holly Misener, and she is the president of the Christian Chamber of Commerce here in the state of Minnesota. And so she rubs shoulders constantly with people that are in leadership roles and can speak into their world. And we're going to deal with some things today that how a leader can transform the culture in their organizational culture, which is such a key area for everything we do. So, Holly, so good to have you here. Welcome. And why don't you just take a moment to share a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we'll jump into some questions.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Randy. I am honored to be here. I have enjoyed getting to know you as we've been preparing for this. You are correct. I am the president of the Minnesota Christian Chamber of Commerce. And I absolutely love what I do because it comes out of me. I am a business owner and I own a wellness company, but I love entrepreneurship, running businesses. And so, out of what I do in my business world, I really felt after meeting some people in the U.S. Christian Chamber of Commerce that we needed a Minnesota Christian Chamber of Commerce. And so we were established. We actually just launched in October, but it has been exciting as we are growing to really serve the business leaders, nonprofit, anybody we can in Minnesota from a Chamber of Commerce perspective. So I am honored to be in this role. I absolutely love it, passion, and I get to do it personally in my own business, but then also serve other business leaders in Minnesota.
Well, I can certainly hear it in your tone of voice that you love what you do, and that's great. So here's a question just to sort of kick us off. Some of the things you talk about, it's helping leaders align their purpose with God's calling on their lives. But in your experience with Christian business leaders, what do you find are the most common misalignments between what leaders think they should be doing and what they're actually called to do? And how does correcting that misalignment change how effective they could be? I mean, if people are misaligned, things are not working out well. So, what's the common misalignment and how can that be corrected?
Well, so obviously with the nonprofit and the Minnesota Christian Chamber, we're serving business leaders. So that misalignment really comes from business owners, entrepreneurs who are trying to balance that they're running a business, but how can they run a business but also walk out their calling to be a Christian business leader? They have the everyday things they're dealing with as far as paying employees, salaries, all those business decisions, but yet also wanting to walk in if they have that call of God's, it's really God's business and we're stewarding those businesses for Him. So most people are feeling the tension of I'm running a business, I'm a business builder, and yet how do I follow God and let this be God's business and truly steward what He's given business leaders and entrepreneurs. So I think that we feel that rub all the time as business leaders, but truly coming back to stewardship and stewarding what God's entrusted us, and then ultimately trusting He is going to provide the things that we need to run our businesses and corporations and nonprofits.
You use the word stewardship, which I think is a pretty profound word in and of itself. To be a steward, in many ways, it means that you are not the owner. You've been entrusted with things to steward, to care for, to utilize,
Mm.
whether they be people on your team, obviously resources that you have. So that whole area of trying to align that business that I do day in and day out with the fact
Mhm.
that I'm called to be a steward of people.
Yeah.
I mean,
Mhm.
I love what you're landing on there. That's huge. So
Mhm.
so good. Here's a question on culture and culture building. In some of the things that I've read, I'm making a quote here. You said that when leaders align their work with God's purpose, communities are strengthened. Could you share a specific example when you saw a leader transform their organizational culture through faith-rooted principles and what tangible business results and outcomes resulted of that shift? I mean, you
Mhm.
don't need to give names, but
Mhm.
Love to hear a little bit of a situation there.
I can think of so many things because ultimately I do truly believe that when we are aligned with God's purposes, I do believe that communities are strengthened. But this one was something that just happened recently and it was profound, even personally in my life. So, like I said, I come from a family of entrepreneurs. So, my dad owns a manufacturing company and I watched him build it from his garage to a successful manufacturing company. 20 years ago, so a long time ago, I really wasn't paying attention, but I knew one of my dad's employees went through a very serious and complicated hard time. And her husband died, and they were in financial struggle, and they just were an employee of my dad's who was in need. And when we also think of what you just mentioned, that stewardship and him also stewarding his employees and being in a place to meet a need for that sudden death in the family, and they had small children and she wasn't working. And so I didn't really know any of this was going on. I guess my sister had told me that my dad had helped her, with some financial things. My dad had helped her with some life insurance, just some practical needs, physical needs that he could do because he was a faith-based company as well. So now 20 years later, I now own my own business and I have a different last name because, married and all that kind of stuff. And a beautiful lady walks in and she probably had some different perspectives and beliefs that I had. And it's very obvious I'm a faith-based business. And she was kind of concerned about this is a Christian company and did she fit here? And did she want to be here in my business? And I just said, why don't we just keep going? I just loved on her and I we started the process. Somewhere in there, she saw our last name was the same as her husband who passed away 20 years ago. It was
Yeah.
my dad's. And she said, "Are
My
you
goodness.
related to this person?" And I said, "Yeah, it's my dad." She burst out in tears and
Uh,
she said, Your dad was the boss of my husband. And when he died, he ministered to our family. And
wow.
now she here is 20 years later walking into my business looking for needs totally different but that we truly can. That's like a community where she had a need that was met in a generation before me, and I can follow this. And man, I just was humbled. I didn't know
Mhm.
everything, but my sister did. Remembers all this and just ministering to this beautiful woman through things that I would have had no idea. But it truly is. We don't know who our clients are. We don't know what our employees need. But when we show up as Christ in our business or nonprofit, like we never know what the Lord's going to do 20 years later. And
Right.
so those are my personal experience of how we're trying to shift the culture and that when people walk into my space, they're feeling the hands and feet of Christ. But what a testimony of this person. It's just beautiful.
Yeah, wow. That's quite the story to see something so many years ago, and all of a sudden somebody ends up in your life. And isn't that sort of like what sometimes happens in our world? And the fact that that lady, even though she was rough on the around the edges, the way you mentioned, but she had been impacted already, and then you just became another thread in that
Hmm.
whole conversation. Love that story. Okay, the next question focuses on what we call wholeness and sustainability. So I know you're passionate about helping people step into what we would say is simply wholeness and freedom. But many nonprofit leaders, presidents, and other executive leaders, they just pour themselves into the business and the ministry. And you know what that's like,
Hmm.
and they burn out and they just get exhausted. How do you counsel leaders to create again sustainable practices that allow
Hmm.
them to serve from overflow rather than depletion? And how does that shift affect their organizational long-term fundraising capacity so they're not running on fumes, but they're running on greater strength? How would you respond to that?
Oh my goodness. Well, yes. Like this is such a good question because anybody who's in any type of leadership knows that people want, our things from us. And how do we keep that balance? I mean, I feel like walking in wholeness is what we need even more than ever. When leaders and Christian leaders and nonprofit leaders, when we're not taking care of ourselves, too much is given, much is expected. And the responsibility that we carry really needs to be that we're walking in wholeness. Because if we're not walking in wholeness, the people around us who are, leaning on our leadership are going to be affected.
For
And
sure.
man, that's hard to do. And so I definitely think that first knowing that, it's just that analogy of you have to put the oxygen mask on first before you do that for someone. And so, holding healthy boundaries and understanding, our capacity in what we're capable of doing, and then knowing how to say no to take care. Our families are important. Like, leaders need to take care of their families and their homes so that when they go out and lead, they're operating out of an overflow. I think of Psalms 23, like our cup overflows, like based
Mm.
on who we are. And when we are walking out, he leads us by still waters, right? Like, we have to take care of ourselves, calm things down, make sure we're taken care of, and then our cup is going to overflow. And so I'm so glad you asked this. It's hard to do, but it's really those boundaries and understanding it's important that we take care of ourselves because of the responsibilities that we carry.
Yeah. That is so good. Yeah, I think of some different leaders that I've served under, and boy, some were exceptional, and
Mhm.
they had a balance in their lives, and they knew when they needed to restore themselves. They knew how to do that. They did it regularly. They just focused on those things. And then I had another individual that we served as missionaries in Peru, and I remember coming over to the house for Thanksgiving. And boy, 10 minutes after the meal was done, he was off to his office working on a project. Unfortunately, he suffered some really serious health concerns not that long after. So you're so right. Finding that balance is exceptionally critical. Well,
Mhm.
at the chamber, you are serving leaders to help them through leadership culture. If you were to advise a nonprofit leader who struggles to talk about money, so this is where we're
Mhm.
going to now bring that in, to ask for support on a particular project, how could you reframe that fundraising as a kingdom activity rather than simply, oh, I've got to go out and ask for more money? What would be
Mhm.
your advice to that kingdom minded person so that the ask is really framed well and it's
Mm.
biblical perspective?
Mhm. It's interesting. I was just talking to someone this morning in a chamber event, and that is her business and ministry. Her nonprofit is fundraising, and I there's so much emotion around money, and so whether we're aware of it or not, and so when we are, concerned about or nervous about asking for money, I really feel like it's a shift in perspective. First of all, it's biblical. God is a God who is generous. Like, he is a God who gives his children good gifts. Like, he is a generous God, number one. Number two, we know that God, I mean, that he wants us to be, as business leaders and nonprofits, to be financially stable, not because we love money. That is not where we want to go, but because we want to have the resources to be able to sow into the kingdom activity that we feel called to do. And so when people are worried about talking about money, I think sometimes they get caught into the negative things, the love of money, the fear around money, all the things, instead of the kingdom principles about money that we should be walking in. And I think when you cast a vision of what you're fundraising for and you trust the Lord to do the work, you can fully share a vision that God's given you and then let the Lord let them know, like, hey, this is something I want to sow into. And I just think trusting God to put it on people's hearts when you cast a vision to know that he's going to bring people who are living in generosity and kingdom principles is going to shift the energy of being like, oh, I got to ask about money. I love it when someone comes to me and shares their vision of the nonprofit or what they're doing. And then I get to go and ask the Lord, like, okay, with the gifts that I have and the resources I have, is this something you want me to steward into? And then just go for it, because that's why we should be stewarding our resources well, business leaders, people, so that we can really be the ones who are sowing into it. So I am a huge advocate for fundraising, cast the vision, and find the people that God's already going to be preparing their hearts to say, I want to do what you're doing, and let go of all of that toxicity around the fear of money, or do they feel like I'm pressuring them? No, the Lord is going to put it on their hearts, and you're just partnering and giving them an opportunity.
Yeah, I love that. It brought me back to a thought around this area for a leader to say, do I believe this is where God wants me to be?
Mhm.
And once you say resolve that and say, "Yes, this is
Mhm.
my spot. This is where I'm to be, and the Lord is at work in
Mhm.
this ministry, in this activity. I'm simply partnering with him." Now he's just inviting me, as you noted, to ask other people to partner with him in
Yeah.
what he's accomplishing. So it's really that security of being so well grounded in, "Yes, this is where God wants me to be." Oh, I love it.
Mhm. So good.
Well, here's a few fast questions at the end of our time. They're more just for you personally. rather than thinking about the chamber. What would be maybe a great piece of advice professionally that you've received from somebody in the past?
Well, so much good advice and people who've gone before me to pour into my life. I mean, it is what it is, but really surrendering my position, my leadership, my resources, my job. I mean, I just feel like surrendering it all and trusting the Lord. I think when you carry a lot of responsibility, you start to feel responsible for the results. And the
Mm.
best advice is really my business is God's business. The Chamber of Commerce is God's chamber. My resources are God's, and as hard as it is to surrender those things, there is so much freedom I can operate. Because frankly, if it doesn't go well, I gave it to the Lord, and then there's a reason versus me like messing it all up. So I think the best advice is just even this year, as I went into 2026, a new surrender of some of these resources Lord's given me, mainly my business and the chamber. This is God's, and I just need to let Him have it, and then walk out what He's called me to do.
Yeah, love it. What's one daily habit you cannot live without?
Oh my gosh. Jesus. Like, I just can't
Okay.
man, if I don't, I just have too many things pulling at my heart, and the days I kinda go off without spending time in the Word of God and
Yeah.
getting grounded and rooted, that's part of that self-care we talked about. I'm just not that useful to people around me. I
Mhm.
need him. I need him in my business. I need him. I need to be in that daily habit of just spending time with him every day is a non-negotiable to me. And what a blessing. I mean, I feel like I've been blessed as the Lord has reminded me, Holly, it goes much easier when you spend time with me no matter what. Then my second daily habit, I love to run. I'm a runner. So I'm like,
Okay.
let me spend time with Jesus and go for a run. And then I'm happy.
Uh, So cool. Love that. Have you run any races or are you more of a recreational runner?
Well, no, I have run a few marathons.
Okay.
I was ran Twin Cities long time ago, Twin Cities Marathon, and then I run Grandma's Marathon 3 or 4
Uh,
times. I've done an ultra marathon, I'm one of those, and then I actually, this was more of a trail thing, but I actually climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, Africa. So,
Whoa.
I have kinda settled now to where I am just a recreational runner now because of just
Okay.
life. I don't have time to train to that level, but,
Yeah.
no, I enjoy training and pushing myself.
Uh, Love it. So good. If you could go back to your 20-year-old self and give yourself a piece of advice, what would that be?
Oh my gosh. I was thinking about this the other day just on my own, and I was like, "Man, if I could be who I am now when I'm 20." Hey, I was so, like, hard on myself, and I was so nervous. I did not walk in the potential that I think God had for me, and
Mm.
so if I could go back, I would probably tell myself, "You're fine. It's gonna be fine." Like, just don't be so worried about pushing yourself or driving or being perfect and all that, and just enjoy it because I feel like now I have more of a freedom of like just that settled of this is who I am. This is who God's called me to be. I can be myself fully. I don't have to shy
That's
away.
it. Yeah,
And that was hard for me to walk in my full calling. That was more my thing of just like the leader that I was. And so if I would have just walked in it, I think I would have done much better.
for sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
Next question. It gets a little bit more personal here. You can take it anywhere you want, but think of a past failure, but not from the standpoint of, oh, this was so negative, but really what that set you up for a potential success in your life. What was
Mm.
that?
Past failure, so many, right? I mean, I always say you fail forward, like it's
Mm.
what you
Yeah,
do and all those quote unquote failures or things that were hard. Probably I just think my biggest probably thing that has held me back that I really had to grow into is like I said, just that overly self-critical and high expectations and just letting that fear hold me back and kind of feeling in that way of man, I sold real estate when I was younger. I was so critical of myself. I could have been so much better if I would have just allowed myself to not worry so much about failing or making a mistake and just walking in that freedom. You kind of mentioned that your first question. Just
sure.
freedom. This is who I am. Keep my eyes on the Lord and don't worry about all the fear of failure. That's it. Fear of failure. And
For sure.
I think I've been
Yeah.
set free from that and really excited what the Lord's building.
What a huge step you've taken in your life that dealing with the fear of failure, because many people, they get stuck there.
Hmm.
They don't get past that. And I'm so unfortunate. There would be such a rich life of experiences, doing
Mhm,
things, helping people, whatever it may be. So
mhm,
glad you're on
mhm,
that other side. So here's the last question. A
mhm.
favorite place on earth to disconnect and recharge. So where's that place you like to go? Maybe locally, maybe nationally, wherever. Mount Kilimanjaro, I don't know. Where it's a recharge spot for you.
Well, if I could really, like, go anywhere on earth, I mountains, probably actually Hawaii, because they have, like, the jungle, the mountains, and then the ocean, and just, yeah, totally disconnect. I think it's so good. I would go into the mountains or Colorado. Um, I love that. Locally, it literally is just disconnect and just be with my family and just spend time with my family and to the basics of, like, this is what's important, and then really my family is gonna be the legacy I lead. The nonprofit, not the chamber, not my business. It's gonna be the people in my family that I've been entrusted with, so I would disconnect with them.
Oh, good.
Mhm.
Well, Holly, been a delight just getting to know you a little bit better, sensing your joy of life, which is
Mhm.
very evident. Appreciate that so very much. Say, for our audience, just love to give you an opportunity to share a little bit more where how people can connect with you. Just feel free to share a little bit about that.
Awesome. Well, mnchristianchamber.org. That is where if you'd like to know more about the Minnesota Christian Chamber of Commerce, we obviously meet the needs for people in a nonprofit, for profit, really just bringing Christian business leaders, owners, entrepreneurs together and just really kind of, I really feel for the Christian Chamber. I have a high mission to really impact the state of Minnesota for
Mm.
such a time as this. And to do that, we need to be linking arms and really kind of moving forward together. So you can find us there, and we would love for you to learn more about it. And then we're obviously on all the social media handles as well, mnchristianchamber.org.
Great. Well, thank you again. And thank you to our audience. Again, my name is Dr. Randy Dirks, and this is Funding Your Future Now podcast. And we'll be sharing more of these in the future and just welcome you to come on back. So appreciate you all being here. And Holly, again, thank you so much. Thanks for being our
Thank
guest.